Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am the Desert Claw, and today we're going to go over Fire Force Chapter 274. But before we get into that, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Doing either helps the channel growth, and it's greatly appreciated. So, Chapters 274 starts out where we last left off with Sho confronting Faerie. And Sho is basically being steadfast and to explain to Faerie that it's over. Now that his brother's broken free, the Savior can now bring hope to people. Their whole plan is going to go up in flames, literally. And Faerie at the time thinks that his little moon shenanigans are still in effect. That's going to cause the kind of despair that he needs to have done. And he's like, you think the moon has come so close, can be stopped? And Sho's like, yeah, there it is. And so basically Shinra was able to stop the moon from hitting the ground, but it's not back in space. It's just chilling in the sky. And Sho actually does say that my brother is the Savior and his existence makes you tremble. And he even goes as far as to say that Shinra will basically rewrite the laws of reality to make sure that hope exists and he's able to save the world. And clearly that's what's happening right now, because you've got this mini-sized moon in the sky. Clearly, if this were the real moon, it wouldn't be this. It'd be much, much bigger than this. And so, Faerie and Sho look like they're about to have a big, giant, showdown. And Faerie asks him if he's going to stop time, and he does. So, you know, he does the JoJo thing, stops time, and Faerie is able to stop it. And so Faerie explains to Sho that because Adolla is so close that the brothers, he says the brothers, are not the only ones who can stop time. And since Faerie seems to have control over gravity, this gives him the ability to stop time as well. Not necessarily stop it, but at least exist within Sho's stop time world. I kept thinking about JoJo's this entire time, and I thought, oh no, we're going to get like 3 chapters of like a JoJo versus Dio type fight in the time world. And it looks like that's what's going to happen. But, you know, Faerie starts blathering off about all kinds of stuff. And the one interesting thing he says is that he was supposed to be originally Sho's guardian before Arrow. And maybe that's because they had a similar power set. But for some reason it didn't happen. And so Sho calls out and says, you know, just because you can now exist in the same reality just makes us even. And so he's like, you won't be able to keep up with my blade. And, you know, Faerie thinks he's too prideful and too arrogant. And then Sho just all of a sudden stabs Faerie pretty brutally through the chest. And Faerie starts, you know, blood comes out of his mouth, his nose, the middle of his body. And it looks like Faerie is going to go out pretty quickly, which is interesting because Faerie is seen to be very, very powerful. And starts announcing that he is the Cataclysm Force. And he says, now it's our time, the hour of martyrs. And a bunch of white-clad show up, and they all pull daggers out. And I'm going to keep this very PG because I think YouTube does not like this subject. They all pull daggers out, and they all do themselves in. That's what we'll say. Well, they go out as martyrs, so to say, and they're gone that quickly. So Faerie, this character that we've been built up forever, that just be super strong, and you know who's gonna fight Faerie, and they've been teasing Sho versus Faerie since before the Cataclysm happened, when they were fighting the big giant pillar monsters. He just goes out. And the reason why he did it is to summon the establishment's most powerful doppelgangers. Which is these. Which I briefly talked about last week. And so I had some questions about this. Why would they need to sacrifice themselves to summon these doppelgangers? And I think I have an answer for that. So if you go back several chapters when the Cataclysm first started, whenever a character would basically give up or say it's hopeless or it's over, that's when a doppelganger would show up and take out the target, right? Well, here we see Conro, Benimaru, Burns, and I'm going to assume it's Assault, and a fourth or a fifth person down there that I have no idea who that is. Of these, it might be Nataku. People also thought Nataku because of the spiky hair. All of these characters are unlikely to fall to despair. So that gives their doppelganger showing up a problem. So I think that's why Faerie and his martyr squad had to go out to supply the necessary means for these doppelgangers to exist now. I don't know if that's the case. You know, maybe there'll be a bigger explanation in the next chapter, but it seems to be the most plausible. The one that kind of throws this out of effect is with Burns. So Burns' doppelganger is the horned one down in the bottom left. And he showed up before when they were, I believe when they were saving Obi. And we first got introduced to Dragon. We first saw Arthur do Plasma Mantle. Burns' doppelganger came through a portal, impaled him with his horn, and dragged him in. Now, the difference is, I'm pretty sure Haumea pulled him in. So Haumea is able to pull in doppelgangers without any kind of sacrifice. And currently we don't know where she is. And so maybe that's why Faerie had this last resort to do it, because Benimaru is not going to fall into despair. He's going to fight to the bitter end. And Conro is just, or Corono is basically just too arrogant and prideful. And, you know, so on and so forth. What also I think is going to happen now is we're going to finally get some closure on what happened to Burns. We don't know if he's dead or if he just got pulled in and he's been fighting this other time in Adolla. Now that his doppelganger has been summoned in the world, maybe Burns is left behind in the other side. I don't know. I think that's another mystery that everyone wants to see solved. So hopefully we'll get some confirmation on that pretty soon. But yeah, that's my speculation on why Faerie had to go out the way he did. And honestly, I was a little disappointed at first by how quickly Faerie went out. But, you know, at the same time, he was on the edge here. He had no choice, it seems. His little moon experiment failed. The most powerful pillars are out. On top of people like Benimaru are still around. The odds are not on their side anymore. They lost their advantage with Dragon gone. That's probably why he was so frustrated. And now we're going to get something potentially even more powerful than Dragon coming out. It'll be really interesting to see. I did look at 275, but it was a lot of dialogue. It was very heavy dialogue, heavy chapter, it looked like. I'll do some quick spoilers on the leak. And as soon as the English translation's out, we'll talk about it. But it looked like there was a correspondence between Corono and Nataku happening. But from my guess, my best guess based on what was happening, I think Nataku was actually talking to Corono's doppelganger. And you do see Benimaru's doppelganger too, but it's very brief. So I don't know what's going on. I need a translation before I can do any kind of talking and speculating on that, but go check that out if you want to. But that's this week's chapter, or that's maybe last week's chapter. I feel like we're always a chapter behind on the translation. So, yeah. Well, beyond that, for the channel, as long as my upload speeds apply and it doesn't look crappy, I think I'm going to start streaming Final Fantasy XIV, potentially on the weekends. I've been playing the game since it came out, and I have patch content to catch up on, and I would really like to stream Endwalker when it comes out. So if that would be something you're interested in, let me know in the comments. I can't promise you the highest quality streams because where I live, the upload speeds are not good, but not terrible either. Like, I might be able to get 1080p. I've done it before in the past, and it turned out okay. But I noticed that some of the more faster paced games that I've tried to stream, like Doom, which is one of my favorite games, doesn't come out very well. But I think Final Fantasy XIV might be a better game for that. Final Fantasy XIV is faster paced, but it doesn't have as jerky camera movements as Doom does. So be fun experiment. If I do decide to do that, you should come hang out and we'll play some games. Yeah, so with that, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know if you want to see some streams, and subscribe for more content. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Peace.